The town of Pembroke Dock in Pembrokeshire is situated on the banks of the River Cleddau, with a population of 9,800. Originally called Patterchurch, Pembroke Dock town expanded rapidly following the construction of the Royal Navy dockyard in 1814. The A477 bridge connects with Neyland on the northern banks of the river. In fact, it was at Neyland that Isambard Kingdom Brunel's original railway terminus of the South Wales Railway was located, adjacent to the transatlantic terminal for the largest ships of the time. The main station of Pembroke Dock is situated close to the town centre, and is nowadays the terminus of the Pembroke Dock Branch. The Pembroke Dock Branch is one of 3 routes for the West Wales lines, and the railway is single track for 27.5 miles to Whitland, with the exception of the passing loop at Tenby. From Whitland we then travel the final 14 miles to Carmarthen, giving a total route mileage from end to end of 41.5 miles. The service along the Pembroke Dock Branch are 2 hourly from Cardiff Central via Swansea, with trains being formed of 2-car class 197 DMUs. Our route follows the path of the Pembroke and Tenby Railway, the company being formed by local supporters. The railway company had opened firstly in total isolation from the rest of the railway network in 1863, but the first part of our journey was opened the following year on the 8th of August 1864. The junction to the docks themselves was just here and opened in July 1871 and was a difficultly graded line with gradients as steep as 1 in 44, in addition to having 6 level crossings in the town. Sadly, the docks branch was part of many rationalisations that took place in the 1960s. The dockyard branch officially closed on the 1st of January 1969, but they had long been dormant. The level crossing at Llanyon Cottages is open, with no safety barriers being lowered, nor is there the provision of road warning lights. So therefore all train drivers are instructed to drive their trains at 5 miles per hour and proceed cautiously over the crossing. Incidentally, this was where Llanyon Halt was located. Short-lived, it had opened in 1905 and closed in 1908. We are now heading in a southerly direction and into the 460-yard-long Pembroke Dock Tunnel, also referred to as Golden Hill or Pembroke Tunnel. This was the location of Golden Hill Platform, which opened a year after Llanyon Halt in 1909, but closed in 1940. nothing remains today of the Pembroke and Tenby's original terminus. The station building has long gone, along with the signal box and passing loop. All that remains here at Pembroke Station is the platform. As mentioned earlier, the station is served every 2 hours by trains coming to and from Swansea, whilst on summer Saturdays, GWR provides 2 trains a day, one of which comes from London Paddington, formed of Class 800 or 802 bi-mode multiple units. Notice the old HST stop signs as we depart Pembroke. We're now on the original path of the Pembroke and Tenby Railway, running for 11.5 miles from here to Tenby itself. The broad gauge South Wales Railway had proposed on building a line to Pembroke and Tenby from Neyland, but this never happened and a ferry service was provided instead. The P&T was authorised by Parliament in 1859 and surprisingly was to be built with standard gauge, opening between Pembroke and Tenby on the 30th of July 1863. This is the first request stop on the branch, Lamphey. The unstaffed halt is in the heart of the village. The village in Welsh is called Llanderfai, and the church located in the centre is dedicated to St Tafai and St Faith. The medieval structure was largely rebuilt between 1869 and 1871. Just a short walk away from the village is the remains of Lamphey Palace, which has its origins stretching as far back as the 13th century. The palace ruins are listed Grade 1, and the grounds of the palace are designated jointly with the Park of Lamphey Court, itself being a Grade 2 listed building and now run as a hotel. bypass a level crossing warning board. The crossing is the same as that at Llanyon, and our driver will now slow our train down to 5 miles an hour. Below the 5 miles per hour and whistle board is a white cross on a blue background. This sign reminds drivers that the automatic warning system is not applicable in this direction. At the beginning of the 20th century, with the growth of seaside holiday traffic, the GWR introduced a summer-only rail motor service between Pembroke Dock and Saundersfoot in June 1905. This allowed a more frequent service, and several halts for the rail motors were open. Beavers Hill Halt stood just here at the level crossing, closed to passengers in 1914, but reinstated once more in 1923, lasting this time way longer than most, until 1964. Manorbier station is 1 mile away to the north of the small village that bears its name. The station is also the railheads of the smaller villages of Jamestown and St Florence. Manorbier is a beautiful little village on the south coast of Pembrokeshire and also has become a tourist centre with nearby attractions such as Manorbier Castle, St James's Church and the sandy beach, cliffs and a connection to the Wales coast path. The level crossing barriers are controlled by the train crews who press a plunger on the platform. Drivers can only proceed across the crossing once a white light is displayed, which means that the lower barrier procedure is complete. Talking of the rationalisations earlier, the line was built with many passing loops. These were located at Narberth, Templeton, Saundersfoot, Manorbier and Pembroke, which had all gone by 1965. The single line sections are Whitland to Tenby and Tenby to Pembroke Dock. Therefore, as of 1971, the line is signalled on the no-signalman key token system. Like that on the Heart of Wales line, the electric key token is collected by the driver at huts located at Tenby. However, at the end of the single line section from Tenby to Whitland, the single line key token needs to be handed to or received by the signaller at Whitland's signal box. Notice the yellow milepost. It is 278 miles from London Paddington via Gloucester. There was another halt just here at Lidstep. The GWR summer-only rail motor service was deemed unsuccessful and was withdrawn after the summer of 1914. The halt, though, survived until January 1956, and nothing remains today. The stunning Pembrokeshire coastline with the beach facing Carmarthen Bay is a joy to behold, reminiscent to those early railway travellers who would frequently visit Tenby on board some of the summer-only excursion services from London. In fact, at the beginning of the 20th century, there was a daily through carriage from Tenby to Paddington and a subsequent return, as well as a sleeping car to and from Pembroke Dock, but sadly this did not survive World War I. As previously alluded to, the summer Saturday GWR IET from London continues this tradition to this day. Penally was closed in 1964, but was temporarily reopened during the summer seasons of 1970 and 1971, before becoming permanently opened for all traffic the following year. Pass a fixed distance signal on the approach to Tenby, the one and only passing place on the branch. The P&T's original terminus at Tenby, which had opened in 1863, was located around about here, but was low-lying and positioned to the south of the town. With the decision made to extend the P&T to Whitland in 1866, the station was resited to today's location. Necessary too, as the extension had to climb up and out of the town towards the main line. The original station was then used by freight and became Tenby Lower Yard, with a junction being added called Black Rock, and survived until 1965. It's very noticeable as we arrive at Tenby Station that the track bed for both tracks are heavily overgrown and in serious need of de-weeding. Notice also to our left that there used to be a third platform road. Possibly this was taken out of use in 1965, at the same time as many other rationalisations took place on the line. Tenby, or Dimbych Pysgod, to give its Welsh name, is popular all year round with holiday makers, mostly due to its pretty location alongside Carmarthen Bay. Typical of many of the houses located in coastal towns, many of them have been painted in a variety of different colours. Other notable features worth seeing here are the 13th century medieval town walls, which also includes the 5-arch Barbican Gatehouse, along with many other tourist attractions. The electric token instrument for the next single line section to Whitland is located at the London end of the platform. The token instrument for the single line to Pembroke Dock is on the other platform. Only one token can be removed at any one time, so until the token for the Whitland-Tenby section has been returned, another cannot be replaced. All of these movements are supervised by the signaller at Whitland signal box. The present-day station buildings date from 1871 and were designed by James Slumpser and built in Bath stone. line begins to climb immediately after the station and crosses part of the town by means of Tenby Viaduct. Completed with 7 arches and is 136 yards long, the viaduct is now Grade 2 listed. The extension to Whitland was granted the Royal Assent in 1864, which allowed the Pembroke and Tenby Railway to connect with the Manchester and Milford Railway at Carmarthen town. Both companies' lines were to be built with standard gauge, but connecting at Carmarthen meant that the P&T had to travel over the broad gauge South Wales Railway. It was naive that the P&T thought the GWR would lay a third rail, making the railway mixed gauge between Whitland and Carmarthen. More of that later in reference to the different types of gauges. The P&T along here to Whitland was standard gauge only, opening to passengers on the 4th of September 1866. The extension is steeply graded, with gradients as steep as 1 in 47. No issues today for the Class 197s and 800s that use this line daily, but just think how much of a struggle it would have been for the steam locomotives of the day, especially when hauling 6 or 7 or more coaches. At present, the line is now climbing through the stunning countryside at 1 in 50 to Kilgetty. In 1874, the finances of the P&T were in serious decline, and by 1877 it was dire. Moreover, the state of the permanent way and other infrastructure was known to be poor, and money needed to be spent. An amalgamation was needed to happen with one of the larger railway companies. The LNWR was considered as a partner, but this led to nothing. Really, the only other partner the P&T could be absorbed by was the GWR, and it did so in August 1897. With that, improvements were made, such as the reopening of the old Pembroke and Tenby loop at Carmarthen, and a new improved Pembroke Dock station, where the locomotive shed was enlarged, and the original P&T workshops were closed. Saundersfoot is a mile to the east on the coast, the main B road running right into the heart of the large village. The station is another request stop for Transport for Wales services, but when the daily summer-only GWR trains call here, it is a scheduled stop. The Saundersfoot Railway passed beneath the station, running from the harbour to Thomas Chapel Colliery near Kilgetty. Open piecemeal between 1830 and 1834, the route carried the coal to the harbour and comprised of a small network totalling some 4 miles. It provides the first example in Pembrokeshire of the joint construction of a harbour and tramway, and remained independent until it closed in 1939. Part of the route is now a footpath called the Miners' Walk. Now we cross over the busy A477. This is Kilgetty. As a request stop, passengers who intend to join this service should make a clear signal to the driver, who will then inform the guard on the train by giving 1 on the bell buzzer. Similar to that on the train, passengers need to inform the guard that they wish to alight, and so the guard in this instance needs to give 1 on the bell buzzer to the driver. If no one is intending to get on or off, 2 buzzes are given by both driver and guard. This is the steepest gradient on our entire route as we climb up to Coldblow Summit at 1 in 47. past the site of the one-time Templeton station. It had opened in 1867 for market days only, but was finally put into public timetables in 1877. Though known as Templeton Platform, the station had closed without the platform suffix in 1964, the station having been renamed in 1905. This is the summit of the line at Coal Blow, and now following the steep climb from Tenby, we descend all the way down to Whitland at 1 in 50. Notice that most of the overbridges were built with double track, which was never laid. Emerging from Narberth Tunnel, we arrive at the station of the same name. Narberth is the last station on the branch and is also the last request stop. Interestingly, the Welsh town has a population of 4,000 since the 2021 census. Its Welsh name is easy to pronounce, Narberth, no N at the beginning. there are several attractions within the area, including the art galleries, the Narberth Museum, the Town Hall, the Queen's Hall, and the castle, albeit now a ruin. we encounter another fixed distance signal, permanently showing caution just before the junction at Whitland, where we shall join the main West Wales Line services from Milford Haven and Fishguard Harbour. first colour light we now encounter. Below the main signal head is a sign reminding the drivers that the token section is coming to an end. Signal W34 gives us a single yellow. At the time of filming, the route indicator wasn't working, but it had been reported, awaiting to be repaired by Network Rail. If it had been working, we would have been given the letter M, which would indicate that we shall be taking the up main. Joined the West Wales line at Whitland, the former South Wales Railway, on part of their route from Carmarthen to Haverfordwest and Neyland, opening on the 2nd of January 1854. The station at Whitland has 3 platforms, one of which is a west-facing bay and only really used by trains off the Pembroke Dock Branch. The P&T had terminated in its own station alongside the GWRs in 1866 due to the conflicting gauges. The signal box is on the other side of the level crossing, and the signaller will come out to meet the driver in order for them to give back the single line key token. For the next 14 miles we run non-stop to Carmarthen. No stations between there and here exist. We previously touched on the fact that the South Wales Railway was of broad gauge and the Pembroke and Tenby of standard gauge. The P&T had proposed to extend to Carmarthen and connect with the Manchester and Milford Railway, which itself also was to be built with standard gauge. It was naive of the P&T to think the GWR would lay an extra rail to make its line mixed gauge, especially with unwelcome competition in its own backyard. So with this, the P&T decided to survey their own line to Carmarthen, and the proposed route was to run south of the GWRs for most of its length, apart from when the route needed to cross it at Sarnai. The GWR opposed to this in vain at first, but in the end they relented, and as their route was already of a double track nature, they decided to convert one of their broad gauge lines to standard gauge in 1869. This welcome relief then enabled the P&T to construct a west curve at Carmarthen, enabling through running from the Whitland direction into Carmarthen town. This conversion was the first instance of a GWR broad gauge track being altered to standard gauge. In 1872 anyways, the whole South Wales Railway was converted to standard gauge, as the broad gauge was losing ground. Isambard Kingdom Brunel, who had died in 1859, never saw this conversion happen, as it began shortly after his death. But of course, as we know, the GWR continues to live on, and is still a train company today, albeit a privatised company. It would be very interesting to hear what Brunel thinks of his railway today. Whitland Tunnel is the last on our journey, the maximum line speed having increased up to 75 miles an hour. This is the A40 London to Fishguard trunk road. So sparse is the area that only 2 intermediate stations were provided on the 14-mile section between Whitland and Carmarthen. The first was here at St Clears. Opened on day 1, it closed in 1964, though there have been many calls for the station to be reopened, but so far nothing has materialised. St Clears has a population today of 3,000. Signalling is now with the box at Carmarthen. other station wasn't that far away from St Clears. It was here at Sarnai. However, the station was situated in the village of Bankerfellin. The station also closed in 1964. We passed back under the A40.
We are now slowing down for Carmarthen, where we shall branch off the main line and into the dead end station. Crossing the River Towie, we branch off the main line onto the north side of the triangle. All through traffic must reverse into the dead end station nowadays or bypass the station altogether. Notice the up above the signal head. The A40 crosses overhead for the last time as we join up with the third side of the triangle. The original Carmarthen station on the South Wales Railway was opened in 1852 from Swansea and was situated at the base of the triangular junction, poorly sited for the town. The second station was opened in 1860 and called Carmarthen Town on the former Carmarthen and Cardigan Bay Railway on its route northwards towards Cynwal Elfed and Pencadar. The present-day station replaced the town station in 1902. The Carmarthen and Cardigan Bay Railway, despite its name, never actually reached Cardigan, as it was only constructed to as far as Newcastle Emlyn. However, it did link up with the ill-fated Manchester and Milford Railway at Pencadar, putting the town on a through route to Aberystwyth by 1867. Nowadays, all those routes have gone, bar the station here at Carmarthen, which still sees regular services to the west and east, and also London. Carmarthen is the largest town on our journey, with a resident population of 16,000. This is the end of the journey for us, but not for the train, as it will continue to Cardiff Central, again reversing at Swansea, and then providing a stopping service along the South Wales Main Line.